The red dust swirled around Dr. Eliza Chen's boots as she carefully extracted the core sample from the Martian regolith. The mission had been grueling, 14 months on the red planet with only 5 other humans for company. But today, all that sacrifice might finally pay off. "Houston, this is Mars Base Alpha. You're going to want to see this," she said, her voice trembling slightly as she held the cylinder up to the sunlight filtering through her helmet. The ice crystals gleamed like diamonds. Not just trace amounts this time. Actual, substantial water reserves hidden just beneath the surface. Little did she know that 63 light-years away, on a planet orbiting Tau Ceti, alarm bells were already ringing. "Commander Vrax, the humans have found it." The intelligence officer's voice crackled through the communication array, multiple eye stalks twitching nervously. "They've located the primary water reserve on Mars." Commander Vrax's scaled skin darkened with displeasure. The collective had been monitoring the primitive species for centuries, watching with amusement as they fumbled their way through basic spaceflight. But in the last 50 Earth years, their progress had become concerning. "How much of the reserve?" Vrax demanded. "Enough to establish a permanent colony. Enough to make Mars theirs." The silence that followed was heavy with implication. The collective had planned to harvest those reserves in another century or two. Water was the most precious commodity in the galaxy, the universal currency that had unified the 17 spacefaring species into the collective. All except humans, who remained blissfully unaware of the greater galactic community. Until now. Back on Earth, the discovery sent shockwaves through humanity. News channels buzzed with excitement as politicians and scientists appeared on split screens, debating the implications. "This changes everything," General Thomas Rivera announced during a rare joint press conference with representatives from NASA, ESA, and the newly formed United Space Initiative. "With these water reserves, we can establish a permanent colony on Mars within the decade. This is no longer science fiction, this is humanity's future." The world watched in awe as the first colonization ships were prepared with unprecedented international cooperation. Old rivals set aside differences in service of this new frontier. For the first time in centuries, humanity seemed united by a common purpose: to reach beyond their cradle world. They never saw the collective's ships entering the solar system, their advanced cloaking technology rendering them invisible to Earth's primitive detection systems. "The diplomatic option has failed," reported Ambassador Cree, her delicate tendrils drooping in disappointment. "I transmitted our formal request that they abandon Mars and leave the water reserves untouched. They didn't even acknowledge receipt of the message." "They probably thought it was some kind of terrestrial prank," Vrax replied, mandibles clicking in annoyance. "These humans are too primitive to recognize interstellar communication protocols." "So what now, Commander?" Vrax studied the holographic display of Earth's solar system, focusing on the small blue planet that had spawned such a troublesome species. "We follow collective protocol for resource protection. Issue a final warning, then limited orbital strikes on their Mars facilities." Ambassador Kree's tendrils coiled anxiously. "Commander, with respect, we've never encountered a species quite like these humans. Our observers report unusual adaptability. Resourcefulness. They've survived catastrophes that should have ended their civilization multiple times. They're primitives with delusions of grandeur." Vrax dismissed her concerns with a wave of his armored claw. "They've barely left their own planet." The first warning came as the Mars colonization ship Endeavour reached the halfway point to the red planet. A blinding light appeared in space directly in their path, a massive vessel that seemed to materialize from nowhere. Captain Riley Nakamura stared at the impossible object on the view screen. "All stop. All systems on standby," she ordered, her voice steady despite the hammering of her heart. The message that followed was broadcast simultaneously to every communication device on Earth and the Endeavour. It appeared in every language, on every screen. "Frowny face, attention humans. You have encroached upon resources claimed by the Galactic Collective. Abandon your Mars operations immediately or face appropriate measures. This is your only warning." For 24 hours, the world held its breath. Emergency sessions of the UN Security Council stretched through the night. Military forces worldwide went to high alert. Religious leaders called for prayer. Doomsday preppers felt vindicated. Then, from the Oval Office, came humanity's response, a single message transmitted toward the alien vessel: Mars is the rightful future of humankind. We will not abandon our destiny among the stars. If you want our water, you'll have to take it from us. The alien ship's response was immediate. A beam of energy lanced out, precisely striking the small research outpost on Mars where Dr. Chen had made her discovery. The facility, and everyone inside it, vanished in a flash of light. The galactic war had begun. The news of the attack reached Earth 17 minutes later, the time it took light to travel from Mars. Screens worldwide showed only static where the outpost's feed had been. 37 souls gone in an instant. Dr. Chen and her team, wiped from existence without warning. In the Oval Office, the president gripped the edge of his desk, knuckles white. "Tell me we have options," he said to the grim-faced advisors surrounding him. Defense Secretary Harlow cleared her throat. "Sir, we're dealing with technology centuries beyond our own. Their weapons? Nothing in our arsenal comes close." "There has to be something," the president insisted. "This isn't just about Mars anymore. This is about humanity's survival." Admiral Jackson stepped forward, tablet in hand. "There might be, sir. Project Prometheus." The room fell silent. Project Prometheus had been the military's black-budget program for decades, a theoretical weapons platform designed to combat threats beyond current understanding. Most considered it science fiction, a waste of taxpayer dollars. Until now, aboard the Endeavour, Captain Nakamura faced her own crisis. The alien vessel maintained position, blocking their path to Mars. The crew watched in horror as the destruction of the Mars outpost played out on their screens. "Options, people," Nakamura demanded, pacing the bridge. "We're sitting ducks out here." Lieutenant Patel looked up from his console. "Captain, I've been analyzing the alien ship's energy output. There's a pattern to it, almost like a heartbeat." Meaning they might have power fluctuations we could exploit. If we time it right, we might be able to slip past them. Nakamura considered this. "And go where?" "Mars is compromised." "Not the primary landing site," Patel replied, pulling up a map of the Martian surface. Dr. Chen's team was drilling in Acidalia planitia, but her preliminary findings suggested the water reserves extend throughout the northern hemisphere. "If we land on the opposite side, we might still secure the water while avoiding direct confrontation," Nakamura finished. "It's risky." "Everything about this mission just became risky, Captain." On Earth, humanity responded to the attack the only way it knew how, with defiance. Recruitment centers were flooded with volunteers. Manufacturing plants converted to military production. Scientists worked around the clock, analyzing the limited data they had on the alien technology. Meanwhile, the collective was facing its own internal strife. The Council of 17 convened an emergency session, many members displeased with Commander Vrax's actions. "You've provoked a species we barely understand," accused Representative Zull of the Ardaxi Confederation, smallest but oldest of the collective members. "Our protocols clearly state observation must continue for at least one local century before engagement." Vrax remained unmoved. "The humans demonstrated aggressive intent toward our resources. The protocols also allow for immediate action in such cases. By destroying their outpost, you've only unified them," Ambassador Kree added. "Our observers report unprecedented cooperation among their nations. They're preparing for war." "Let them prepare," Vrax said dismissively. "Their most advanced weapons are barely suitable for low orbit. They pose no threat to the collective." Representative Zull's crystalline form shimmered with concern. "Don't underestimate them. The Ardaxi have observed Earth longer than any other collective species. Humans possess qualities that our models struggle to quantify." "Sentimentality," Vrax scoffed. "The water reserves of Mars are worth more than any primitive species' feelings." What none of them knew was that humanity had been preparing for this moment without realizing it. Deep beneath the Nevada desert, Project Prometheus was being activated. The massive underground facility hummed with energy as systems dormant for years came online. The Dr. Vivian Roberts, the project's lead scientist, supervised the process. It was never meant to be used, she told the military observers. It was theoretical, a thought experiment with funding. Well, it's not theoretical anymore, General Rivera replied. How long until it's operational? Roberts hesitated. The targeting system needs calibration, and we're still not sure about the power requirements. 2 weeks, maybe 3, assuming nothing goes wrong. You have 6 days, the general said flatly. Alien scouts have been detected entering Earth's atmosphere. Whatever they're looking for, we need to be ready when they find it. In orbit around Mars, the Endeavour executed a daring maneuver. Timing their burn with a fluctuation in the alien ship's energy field, they changed course for the dark side of Mars. They're following, Lieutenant Patel reported, monitoring the sensors. As expected, Nakamura replied. Initiate Phase 2. The ship's outer hull began shedding debris, pieces of equipment, storage containers, all carefully selected to create a cloud of material between them and their pursuers. Hidden among the debris were the ship's shuttles, each carrying a small team and equipment essential for their revised mission. The alien vessel hesitated, its sensors confused by the scatter of objects. By the time it began targeting the largest piece, the now empty Endeavour, the shuttles were already entering Mars' atmosphere, hidden from detection by the planet itself. On the bridge of his command ship, Vrax received the report with growing irritation. Primitive deception tactics, he muttered. Find those shuttles. Nothing touches the surface of Mars. But deep down, for the first time, he felt something unfamiliar. A twinge of doubt about just how primitive these humans really were. The Martian dust storm came as a blessing. Red clouds swirled across the northern hemisphere, providing cover for the 3 shuttles as they touched down in the Utopia Planitia region. Lieutenant Commander Miguel Ortiz led the ground team, each member carrying equipment that had been hastily repurposed for their new mission. Comms check, Ortiz said, adjusting his helmet as they stepped onto the rust-colored surface. Remember, minimal transmissions. We don't know what kind of tech these aliens have. Assuming they can see through this storm at all, Dr. Jessica Wright replied, the geologist already setting up her equipment. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency despite the bulky gloves of her suit. I need core samples from at least 3 sites to confirm Dr. Chen's theory. Ortiz nodded. You've got 20 minutes at each location. Not a second more. As the team spread out across the Martian landscape, Earth was preparing for its own confrontation. The alien scouts had been tracked to several major cities, their cloaking technology good, but not perfect. Thermal imaging had picked up anomalous readings moving through crowds in New York, Beijing, and London. They look like us, reported Agent Diane Garcia, watching surveillance footage from a New Delhi market. The figure on screen appeared human in every way, save for a slight delay in blinking patterns. If we hadn't known what to look for, we'd never have spotted them. In the Nevada facility, Dr. Roberts hadn't slept in days. Project Prometheus had never been meant for deployment. It was theoretical weapons technology based on principles that skirted the very edge of known physics. The original designs called for an orbital platform, but there was no time to launch one now. We're adapting the targeting system for ground-based deployment, she explained to General Rivera as they walked through the cavernous main chamber. At its center stood a device that resembled a massive gyroscope, concentric rings slowly rotating around a pulsing blue core. The power requirements are substantial. How substantial? We'll have to reroute power from 3 western states. There will be blackouts. Rivera's expression remained grim. Better a few hours without power than a future without humanity. In orbit, the alien flagship had deployed a dozen smaller vessels to search the Martian surface. Commander Vrax paced the bridge, his patience wearing thin. The storm is interfering with our sensors, his second-in-command reported. We've lost track of the human shuttles. Then send more ships, Vrax snapped. I want those humans found before they can establish a foothold. Ambassador Cree entered the bridge, her movements hesitant. Commander, I've received a direct communication from the Council. They're concerned about escalation. Vrax's scales darkened with anger. The council gave me full authority for this operation. That was before the humans demonstrated unexpected resilience, Kree countered. The Ardaxi representative has shared historical data suggesting the species might be more dangerous than we anticipated. Dangerous? Vrax laughed, a harsh sound that made junior officers flinch. They're barely space-capable. Amar. Yes. Dr. Wright stared at her readings in disbelief. Commander Ortiz, you need to see this, she called over the comm. Ortiz made his way to her position, the winds of the dust storm battering against his suit. What am I looking at? Wright pointed to a holographic display hovering above her equipment. The water isn't just frozen in pockets as we thought. There's an entire network of aquifers beneath the surface, thousands of them interconnected. Her voice grew excited despite the danger of their situation. And look at these mineral readings. This isn't just water, it's exactly the right composition for a high-pitched whine cut through the air, audible even through their helmets. One of the team members pointed skyward. Something's coming through the storm. On Earth, Project Prometheus reached critical readiness. The massive rings spun faster, the blue core pulsing with increasing intensity. The facility's lights dimmed as power was diverted to the main chamber. Targeting coordinates locked, announced the technical officer. Power at 87% and climbing. Dr. Roberts watched the monitors with a mixture of fear and pride. This technology was never supposed to exist outside of theoretical models. The potential for unintended consequences. We're out of options, Doctor. The president's voice came through the secure line. He had been patched in from the Emergency Operations Center beneath the White House. The aliens have begun systematic strikes against our satellite network. We've lost 40% of our communications capability in the last hour. At that moment, in cities around the world, the alien scouts moved in perfect synchronization. Each one approached critical infrastructure, power plants, water treatment facilities, transportation hubs, and placed small devices that immediately began to interface with Earth technology. In Beijing, security forces managed to corner one of the scouts. Rather than surrender, the being shed its human appearance, revealing a form that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states. Before it could be contained, it transmitted a signal that caused every electronic device within a half-mile radius to fail. Aboard his flagship, Vrax received confirmation that the preliminary sabotage phase had begun. Excellent. Prepare the main fleet for arrival. Once Earth's infrastructure is compromised, we'll offer them terms. And what terms will those be, Commander? Kree asked. Complete withdrawal from Mars, surrender of all spacefaring capability, and restricted development under collective supervision, Vrax replied. They can keep their planet, we only want the water. On Mars, Ortiz and his team scrambled for cover as alien craft descended through the dust storm. They had found a natural formation of rock outcroppings that provided minimal shelter. Can we contact Earth? Dr. Wright asked, clutching her precious data core. Ortiz shook his head. Not without giving away our position. He checked his weapon, a standard-issue sidearm that suddenly seemed pathetically inadequate. The shuttle's emergency beacon is our only option, but once we activate it, they'll know exactly where we are, Wright finished. The alien craft hovered ominously, scanning patterns cutting through the dust. They were being hunted, and time was running out. Back in Nevada, Project Prometheus reached full power. The facility trembled as energy coursed through systems never meant to handle such loads. Target locked on alien flagship, the targeting officer announced. Firing solution ready. Dr. Roberts stared at the final authorization screen, her finger hovering over the confirmation. This changes everything, she whispered. Not just the war, but what humanity becomes. General Rivera placed a steady hand on her shoulder. They changed the rules when they attacked us. Now we show them who they're really dealing with. Across the solar system, on Mars and Earth, in orbit and deep space, humans and aliens hung suspended in that final moment before irrevocable action. The next move would determine not just who controlled the water on Mars, but the very future of humanity among the stars. Dr. Roberts' finger pressed down on the confirmation. The massive rings of Project Prometheus accelerated to a blur, the blue core blazing with energy that made the air itself seem to warp. A low hum built to a deafening roar as the facility shook violently. Through the observation window, military personnel and scientists watched with equal parts hope and terror. "Energy signature at maximum," called out the chief engineer, his voice barely audible over the noise. "Firing in 3, 2. The lights across the facility went dead. The humming stopped. The spinning rings slowed to a halt. "What happened?" General Rivera demanded, activating his emergency flashlight. The engineer frantically checked his backup systems. "Something overrode our commands. The entire system just shut down." "Impossible," Dr. Roberts whispered. "The system is isolated. Nothing can access it remotely." A voice came from the darkness behind them, calm, measured, and unmistakably not human. "Not entirely impossible, Dr. Roberts." Armed guards swung around, weapons raised. In the glow of emergency lights, a figure stepped forward. It appeared human at first glance, but there was something subtly wrong with its proportions, its movements too fluid. "Lower your weapons," the being said. "They would be ineffective, and I am not here as an enemy." "Who the hell are you?" Rivera demanded. "My designation is Observer 17. I represent the Ardaxi Confederation within the collective." Dr. Roberts moved forward despite the guards' protests. "You're one of them. The aliens." "Yes, though that term lacks precision. There are 17 distinct species in the collective, each with their own biological and cultural particularities." "How did you get in here? How did you shut down Prometheus?" Observer 17 tilted its head slightly. "We have been watching your species for over 3,000 years. Did you think we wouldn't notice your most ambitious weapons project?" A slight smile appeared on its almost human face. "As for how I shut it down, your theoretical physics is impressive but incomplete. There are gaps in your understanding." On Mars, Ortiz and his team were bracing for the end when the alien ships suddenly broke off their search pattern. The vessels hovered for a moment, then accelerated upward, punching through the dust storm toward orbit. "What just happened?" Dr. Wright asked, clutching her data core. Ortiz shook his head. "I don't know, but I'm not waiting to find out." He activated his comm, "All teams, converge on the primary shuttle. We're getting off this rock while we have a chance." In orbit around Mars, Commander Vrax received an emergency transmission that made his scales pale to a sickly white. "Impossible," he hissed. "The Ardaxi wouldn't dare interfere directly." "It appears they have, Commander," his second reported. "Observer 17 has revealed itself to the humans and disabled their weapon. The Council is demanding an immediate cessation of all Melita re-operations." Vrax slammed his armored fist into a nearby console, shattering it. "The water reserves, the Council has voted 13-4 in favor of immediate withdrawal." Ambassador Kree's tendrils vibrated with a mixture of relief and concern. "There's more, Commander. The Ardaxi have shared classified historical data with the Council. It seems this isn't the Collective's first encounter with humans." Back on Earth, in the darkened Prometheus facility, Observer 17 revealed the truth that would change humanity's understanding of its own history. "Your species was not born on Earth," it stated simply. "You were placed there." The room fell silent. General Rivera's flashlight beam wavered slightly. "That's absurd," Dr. Roberts finally said. "We have a complete evolutionary record. Fossil evidence. DNA, all consistent with a carefully managed relocation," Observer 17 replied. "Approximately 50,000 of your years ago, the original human homeworld faced extinction. A rogue planetoid was going to impact it, an impact that would destroy all complex life." "What world?" Rivera demanded. "Where?" "You call it Mars." The revelation hit like a physical blow. Dr. Roberts steadied herself against a console. That's not possible." "The evidence is there, Doctor. Your scientists have already found it puzzling that Mars once had liquid water, a thicker atmosphere, perhaps even life, before some catastrophic event. That event was real. The Ardaxi, already ancient then, made the decision to preserve your species by relocating a viable population to Earth, which was then in early developmental stages. You're saying we're Martians? One of the younger scientists laughed nervously. In a sense, the Ardaxi altered your physiology to thrive on Earth. Memories of your origins faded over generations. But certain instincts remained, including an inexplicable drive to return to Mars. On the screens around them, satellite imagery showed alien scouts across Earth suddenly ceasing their activities. In city after city, the beings simply stopped, then began walking toward open areas where shimmering fields of energy appeared to collect them. Observer 17 gestured to the screens. The collective is withdrawing. Commander Vrax overstepped his authority by attacking your outpost. The Ardaxi have reclaimed certain oversight privileges regarding Earth. Why tell us this now? Dr. Roberts asked. After 50,000 years of silence? Because you found the water, Observer 17 replied. And with it you would soon find something else. Something buried beneath the surface when we evacuated your ancestors. It paused, looking at each human face in turn. The Ardaxi preserved more than just your people. We preserved your technology, your history, your knowledge, sealed in vaults beneath the Martian surface, waiting for you to return when you were ready. General Rivera's expression hardened. And who decides when we're ready? You did, Observer 17 said simply. When you chose to return to Mars not as conquerors, but as explorers. When Dr. Chen extracted that core sample, she wasn't just finding water, she was unlocking the first key to your species' legacy. On Mars, as Ortiz's team prepared for emergency departure, Dr. Wright's data core began emitting a signal they couldn't explain. The ground beneath them trembled, and a section of Martian surface began to shift, revealing something buried beneath millennia of dust and rock. A doorway marked with symbols that seemed at once alien and strangely familiar, and in the depths of space, beyond Neptune's orbit, the real collective fleet, not Vrax's small expeditionary force, but hundreds of massive ships, held position, waiting to see what humanity would do with the truth of its origins, and whether the children of Mars would reclaim their birthright among the stars. The ancient Martian door groaned open, releasing air that had been sealed for 50,000 years. Dr. Wright's instruments went wild, detecting energy signatures unlike anything in human scientific records. Commander Ortiz took point as they cautiously entered the darkened passage, their helmet lights cutting through dust that had waited millennia to be disturbed. This can't be real, whispered Dr. Wright, her voice filled with awe as the walls around them began to illuminate with a soft blue glow in response to their presence. Check your suit integrity, Ortiz ordered the team. We don't know what kind of... He stopped mid-sentence as the passage opened into a vast chamber. The team stood frozen at the threshold, staring at the impossible sight before them. The chamber stretched far beyond what their lights could reach, filled with rows of sleek metallic structures. In the center stood what could only be described as a control station, its design both alien and intuitive. It's responding to our presence, Dr. Wright said, noticing how lights followed their movements. It recognizes our DNA. On Earth, in the Prometheus facility, Observer 17 continued its revelation. The Ardaxi could not save your entire civilization. The evacuation was incomplete. How many were left behind? Dr. Roberts asked. Millions. Those who believed the danger was exaggerated or who refused to abandon their world. Observer 17's expression showed something like regret. When the impact came, it was worse than predicted. Mars lost its magnetic field, its atmosphere was stripped away. Those who remained tried to survive underground, using the technology available to them. And they died, General Rivera stated flatly. No, Observer 17 replied. They adapted. The screens around them flickered to life, showing images transmitted from Ortiz's team on Mars. The vast chamber, the ancient technology, and something else. Movement in the shadows beyond the range of their lights. My God, breathed Dr. Roberts. There's something alive down there. On Mars, Ortiz signaled his team to hold position as shapes emerged from the darkness. They walked upright but moved with an unsettling fluidity. Their bodies seemed almost translucent, with complex circulatory systems visible beneath skin that had evolved to survive the harsh Martian environment. One stepped forward, regarding the humans with eyes that reflected the blue light in a way that was not quite natural. Then, to everyone's shock, it spoke, the words halting but recognizable. "The children return." The voice rasped with disuse, as though speech was an almost forgotten concept. Ortiz found himself lowering his weapon, a strange recognition dawning despite the alien appearance of these beings. "They're speaking English," one of the team members whispered in disbelief. "No," Dr. Wright realized, checking her translator. "They're speaking Proto-Indo-European, one of humanity's oldest language roots. Our translators are picking it up because it's our own ancestral language." The Martian being gestured toward the control station. "The key awaits. The legacy is yours." With trembling hands, Dr. Wright approached the station. Symbols illuminated as she drew near, symbols that resonate with something deep in human racial memory. Without knowing how she knew, she placed her palm on a central panel. The entire chamber surged with light. Holographic displays erupted around them, showing images of ancient Mars, blue skies, vast oceans, sprawling cities of a design both beautiful and functional. Then came the warning, the approaching planetoid, the desperate evacuation, and finally, the adaptation. The survivors, retreating underground, using genetic modification to survive as Mars died around them. Generation after generation, changing, evolving, becoming something neither human nor alien, sustained by the last reserves of water deep beneath the surface. "They've been waiting for us," Dr. Wright realized, tears streaming down her face inside her helmet. "For 50,000 years, they've been waiting for us to come home." On Earth, Observer 17 watched the transmission with the others. "The adapted ones have guarded your legacy. They maintain the technology, the knowledge, the history, waiting for the day their changed cousins would return from Earth." "Why didn't you tell us?" demanded General Rivera. "All these years, we could have returned sooner." "That was debated," Observer 17 admitted. "Some among the Ardaxi believed intervention was necessary. Others felt your species needed to find its own way back, to prove you were ready." It paused. "When you discovered the water, it triggered automated systems that alerted both the adapted ones and the collective. Commander Vrax saw only a resource to be claimed. The Ardaxis saw the completion of a 50,000-year promise." In orbit around Mars, Commander Vrax received the transmission with mounting fury. The Council had ordered withdrawal, but the revelation of the adapted Martians changed everything. If these beings possessed ancient technology that predated even the collective, "Prepare main weapons," he ordered. "Target the human landing site and those abominations beneath the surface." His second-in-command hesitated. "Sir, the Council has explicitly forbidden—" "The Council isn't here," Vrax snarled. "With this technology, we could dominate the collective for centuries. No more sharing, no more consensus." Ambassador Kree's voice cut through the bridge. "Commander Vrax, stand down. You are relieved of command by order of the Council." Vrax turned to see Kree flanked by security officers, their weapons already drawn. "You dare." "The vote was unanimous," Kree replied. "Even your own species representatives agreed." On Mars, Dr. Wright had reached the heart of the ancient system. The adapted Martian guided her hands across controls that responded to her touch as if designed for her. Data streamed into her suit's systems. The complete history of Mars, the science that had allowed a civilization to thrive, the secrets of technologies lost to time. "There's something else here," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "Something they developed after we left, after they were forced to adapt." "What is it?" Ortiz asked. Before she could answer, the chamber shook violently. Dust and debris rained down from above. "Orbital bombardment," Ortiz realized. "Someone's firing on our position." The adapted Martian's expression showed alarm. It gestured urgently to a section of wall that was beginning to slide open, revealing a passage deeper into the complex. "Follow." "Safety. We can't just abandon the data," Dr. Wright protested as Ortiz began ushering the team toward the escape route. "We won't," the Martian assured her, placing a crystalline device in her hands. "All is here. The future of both peoples." In Earth orbit, Project Prometheus had been reactivated, not as a weapon, but as a communication array of unprecedented power. With Observer 17's guidance, Dr. Roberts had redirected its energy to broadcast a message to the full collective fleet beyond Neptune. "If this works," she told General Rivera, "we're about to change the balance of power in the galaxy." The message was simple: footage from Mars showing the adapted Martians, the ancient technology, and the reunion of two branches of humanity separated for 50 millennia. Along with it went a proposal, not from Earth's governments, but from Dr. Roberts herself. "The water of Mars belongs to neither Earth humans nor the collective," her message declared. "It belongs to those who stayed behind, who adapted, who kept our legacy safe. We propose a new agreement, a shared future between all branches of humanity and the collective, with the adapted Martians as equal partners." On Vrax's ship, the mutiny had succeeded. Ambassador Kree now stood on the bridge, watching as Vrax was escorted to confinement. "Cease all hostile actions immediately," she ordered, "and open a channel to the human facility on Mars." Deep beneath the Martian surface, the team had reached a vast cavern that took their breath away. Here, protected from the orbital bombardment, was a city, small but vibrant, populated by hundreds of the adapted Martians. Children played in artificial gardens. Elders worked at technological interfaces. Life had continued, hidden away for 50,000 years. "They've been thriving down here all this time," Dr. Wright marveled. The Martian who had guided them approached with others who appeared to be leaders of their community. One carried a device that enhanced their limited speech. "The circle completes," the translator rendered their words. "The separated branches rejoin. But the true gift awaits." They were led to a central structure, where a massive apparatus hummed with power. At its heart was something that defied easy description, a swirling matrix of energy and matter, carefully contained. "What is it?" Ortiz asked. "Terraforming catalyst," came the reply. "Developed over 50,000 years. The key to restore Mars. To bring back the skies, the waters. To make our world live again." Dr. Wright's scientific mind raced to comprehend the implications. "You're saying you've developed technology that could reverse Mars' environmental collapse? Restore its atmosphere? Its magnetic field? For the day when our cousins returned from the blue world. For when we could rebuild together." The communication system crackled to life. Ambassador Kree's voice came through, formal but with an undercurrent of genuine respect. "People of Earth. Adapted people of Mars. The collective has received your transmission and proposal. A delegation is being dispatched to formally recognize both branches of humanity and to discuss terms for peaceful cooperation." Ortiz looked at the adapted Martians, then at his own team, a slow smile spreading across his face. "It seems we have a lot of catching up to do. 50,000 years worth." In the Nevada desert, as the sun rose over Project Prometheus, Observer 17 stood with Dr. Roberts, watching real-time footage from Mars. The orbital bombardment had ceased. The Endeavour shuttles had established a secure base camp. Earth and Mars were in constant communication for the first time in 50 millennia. "You knew this would happen," Dr. Roberts said, not a question but a statement. "Theodaxi Bell. Eved it possible," Observer 17 admitted. "But belief and knowledge are different things." "And Vrax? The water." "Commander Vrax will face justice for his actions. As for the water, it appears that with the adapted Martians' terraforming technology, there will eventually be enough for everyone." Observer 17 turned to face her directly. "The question now is whether humanity, both branches, is ready to take its place among the stars. Not as junior members of the collective, but as equals." Dr. Roberts looked at the footage of Earth and Mars humans working side by side in the ancient facility. Two branches of the same species, separated by 50,000 years and millions of miles, yet still recognizing each other as kin. "I think," she said with quiet confidence, That we've been ready for a very long time. The screen shifted to show a wider view of Mars, the red planet that had once been blue, and might be again. The planet that humanity had never truly left behind. The planet that had always been calling them home. 6 months passed in the blink of a cosmic eye. On Mars, the landscape was changing, subtly at first, then with gathering momentum. The terraforming catalyst had been deployed at strategic points across the northern hemisphere, beginning the long process of atmospheric regeneration. Instruments already detected minute increases in air pressure, the first whispers of what would one day become breathable atmosphere. The original Mars base Alpha had been rebuilt and expanded, now serving as the primary diplomatic outpost where 3 distinct peoples, Earth humans, adapted Martians, and collective representatives, worked to forge a future none had imagined possible. Dr. Jessica Wright stood at the observation dome, watching the dust storms that still raged across the surface. But now, each particle of dust carried microscopic terraforming agents, each gust of wind part of the planet's healing. "Hard to believe it's the same place," Commander Ortiz said, joining her at the viewport. The past months had etched new lines on his face, but his eyes carried a spark of wonder that hadn't dimmed since that first moment in the underground city. "It's not the same place," Wright replied. "And neither are we." Below the surface, the adapted Martian city had opened its doors to visitors from Earth. Cultural exchange programs paired scientists from both branches of humanity. The adapted Martians possessed knowledge that had developed along an entirely different evolutionary path. Their understanding of genetic modification alone had revolutionized Earth medicine overnight. In return, Earth provided resources the underground city had lacked for millennia: art, music, and the simple joy of connection with their long-lost family. "The preliminary translation of their historical archives is complete," Wright told Ortiz, her tablet displaying rows of decoded Martian text. "It's fascinating, they've been watching us all this time. Their long-range sensors tracked Earth for 50,000 years, monitoring our development. Did they ever consider contacting us sooner? They tried, actually. 3 times throughout history. Ancient Egypt, classical Greece, and once during the Renaissance. But the Ardaxi intervened each time, convinced we weren't ready." Ortiz laughed softly. "Turns out we just needed to find water on Mars to prove ourselves." On Earth, the revelation of humanity's true origins had sent shockwaves through society. Religious institutions grappled with the implications. Historians frantically rewrote textbooks. Genetic researchers confirmed what Observer 17 had claimed: subtle markers in human DNA showed evidence of ancient engineering to adapt to Earth's environment. Project Prometheus had been completely redesigned. No longer a weapon, it now served as Earth's primary link to the vast communication network that spanned the collective's territory. Information flowed in both directions, carefully regulated, but opening doors to technologies and ideas that would have seemed like magic a year earlier. In the Nevada facility, Dr. Roberts met with Observer 17 for what would be their final conversation. The Ardaxi representative had been recalled to the Collective Council, where debates about humanity's new status continued. "Your people continue to surprise us," Observer 17 admitted. "Most species take generations to adapt to interstellar society. Yours has done it in months." "We had good teachers," Roberts replied. "Both you and our Martian cousins. The Martian branch may have developed the terraforming technology, but your branch contributed something equally valuable: perspective. The ability to bridge divides, to find common ground." Observer 17's form shimmered slightly, its appearance becoming less human as it prepared for departure. It's why the Council voted to grant both branches full membership status. And Commander Vrax? What happened to him? Justice by collective standards. His mind has been adjusted. He will serve as a cultural liaison to human colonies for the next century, learning what he refused to learn before: the value of cooperation. In orbit around Mars, the Endeavour had been joined by vessels from 17 different species, forming a station that served as the solar system's first true interstellar port. Captain Nakamura had been promoted to admiral, overseeing the integration of human spacecraft into the collective's fleet. The adapted Martians have requested to name the first terraformed region, she told her officers during their weekly briefing. They want to call it Chen Plains, after Dr. Eliza Chen and her team. A moment of silence honored those first explorers who had unwittingly sparked a revolution by finding water on Mars. On the surface below, the first experimental dome had been erected directly above the ancient facility. Inside, Earth plants grew in Martian soil enriched with adapted Martian bioengineering. The air inside was still supplemented with oxygen, but less each day as the terraforming took hold. A group of schoolchildren, some from Earth, some the offspring of the adapted Martians, pressed their faces against the dome's transparent walls, watching the sunset paint the landscape in shades of orange and gold. To them, the division between Earth-human and Mars-human already seemed like ancient history. They were simply humans, standing together on the world where their species began. 50,000 years of separation had ended. The water that had sparked a conflict had become the foundation of peace. And as the first stars appeared in the Martian sky, they shone on a planet where humanity, in all its forms, had finally come home. The ancient Martians had a saying, now taught to children of both branches: water flows where fate leads, but it always returns to its source. Humanity had done the same, completing a circle 50 millennia in the making, and the universe, watching through the countless eyes of the collective, wondered what this reunited species might accomplish next.